also like to thank Patricia and VDAC for the last panel. We literally saw that panel a month ago at an event. The room was full of women, and there was myself, Dan, Jono, and Margaret's husband. Dan had to leave early. I had to leave early to go to other sessions, and the women told us, you don't have to leave, we don't bite. And we said, no, we're fine. So I looked at them as just great founders, not gender. Everything they were doing was outstanding. We have another outstanding panel here, and I'll do a quick intro, and then I'll let each of the panelists give a little more background and introduction. So when I think of an innovative venture capitalist team, I think of Eric. He and his brother, you need to follow their blogs. When we talk about cutting edge, developing new technology, building new companies, they are tops in that. Next to Eric is David, who I have known since Samsung days, Samsung Innovation, and then went to Microsoft. And he is Chief Global Medical Officer for Microsoft. And many people go, I didn't know Microsoft was doing healthcare. They're one of the largest players out there. And then our other panelists, Kate and Teginder, remind me daily of what Johnson & Johnson does to create outstanding leaders and visionaries. Both are alumni. Kate has HEI, she's going to tell you about that, and working with health equity and in underserved health populations and bringing innovation into that space. And then we have Teginder, who is over at Google now, leading AI within Google. So it's great to have all four here. Thank you for coming and being a part of this today, especially on late notice. So that's great. Why don't I start with Teginder? Why don't you give us a little more background for you?
Sure. Thank you, Dennis, for getting us all together here. Very happy to be here. I trained as a pharmacist, then was a drug discovery researcher, and spent 2 decades in pharma, last 8 with Johnson & Johnson. And the common theme was, how do we actually use emerging technologies to actually do things more effectively and more efficiently at better speed, better quality. So the shift to Google was actually driven by that mission rather than actually staying within one company doing that. How do we actually help all the life sciences company do that? So my mission is to actually help life sciences companies use the latest AI in a very effective and efficient manner. Thank you.
Kate, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and where you are now?
Okay, thank you so much for inviting me. Happy to be here on short notice. Kate Merton, I'm actually a mathematical modeler by background. I took that into discovering a drug at J&J. Lucky enough to be on a team that discovered that for heart failure, and then I went to run clinical trials in diabetes to get a product approved, which was super important to me because that's a disease that my mum had, and the best day of my life, I think, work-wise, is when my mum called me to say, hey, that drug you just got approved, I've just got a prescription for it, and I'm about to take it. And I took that experience, and then in J&J actually opened up J Labs here to help innovators bring new products to market. I did a stint at a payer, and I've rolled all of that experience into now what is really important to me and my business partner, which is bringing new solutions to underserved. So we prioritize the needs of people on Medicaid, Medicare, those who are in rural environments and really just don't have access to care for a variety of reasons.
Thank you. And David, give us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Hi. Thank you for inviting me. My name is David Rhew. I'm the Global Chief Medical Officer for Microsoft. I'm a physician, a technologist, a health services researcher, and my area of interest is in how technology improves outcomes, access to care, quality of care, patient safety, and the overall experience for both patients and providers. At Microsoft, I work very closely with our clients across the globe to really help them understand how to harness the new technologies, specifically AI, to be able to make some meaningful impact both on their business and also on the world.
And Eric, a little background on you, please.
Hi, I'm a co-founder, co-managing partner of Averin. We focus on how technology is disrupting every touch point in human health. Co-founded with my brother. We're both entrepreneurs by background. I'm the tech guy. He's the MD, PhD. Between us, we started 30+ companies, 8 worth over $1 billion, so a lot of operating and domain focus in this space.
Great, Thank you, everyone. So I'm going to start off, and we'll go down the line here. I'm going to start off with Eric. Basically, what is the tech that you are looking at right now, the thing that's keeping you up, the problem you are trying to solve with you as a venture capitalist?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing that maybe everybody wants is to shift the healthcare ecosystem from reactive to proactive. And there's a lot of steps along the way to make that possible. And arguably people have overshot that a little bit. But I think what's really important is how can you get really accurate, high signal, minimally invasive diagnostics that give you real insights into early stages of actual diseases that can get you into the healthcare system earlier in a more treatable fashion. And so I'm not really personally a huge fan of data for data's sake as much as, hey, this is early stage, cancer of this form with a minimally invasive fashion, you need to do something about it. Or, here's a minimally invasive alternative, like lightweight CGM alternative or something that can surface real biomarkers, that can change your lifestyle, that can give you behavioral feedback, and modify it so that, the overall impact to the healthcare system is lower. And sorry for going too long here, but, one of the lenses I personally use is what is the cost of the data to the healthcare system? And if the cost, not to you personally, but in the aggregate of the system that you're implementing, if you are introducing more total cost than you're saving, then it's not really a net positive. And so, to pick on, I guess I won't say the companies, but like if you're sending people to MRIs to get them early stage, low fidelity detection of potential cancers, but this sends them on these medical odysseys that in turn creates a lot of cost to the healthcare ecosystem, takes a lot of resources out of the healthcare system. While it may make certain people feel good, it's low signal, high noise, high cost. It doesn't really do that objective.
And for David, what are you seeing? We have a room full of investors. What's on your radar? Because investors like to get ahead of the rest of us. So what is the sort of tech or problem you are trying to solve these days?
Yeah, I think you can't go to any type of conference without there being some discussion about AI. And obviously there's a lot of interest in it. A lot of people feel that it can transform the world. But a lot of the applications today are very focused on just improving operational efficiencies. What we can envision as maybe we plan ahead or look ahead are AI being applied to solve problems that are really difficult to solve. So I'll from a healthcare perspective, I'll share with you a couple of really tough problems. The rising cost of healthcare and access to affordable healthcare. These are things that we have struggled trying to solve. How could AI potentially address that? Well, back to what we just talked about earlier. Can you become more proactive? Can you identify individuals before they actually get sick? Turns out that 5% of the population is responsible for 50% of the overall cost of care, 20% for 80%. So if we could actually find that 5% before they actually have the heart attack, the stroke, and all the different things that ultimately cause a cascading element of rising costs, we could actually do something significant. But how do you find them? Because you have to rely on them to actually come in, and you have to do screenings. Well, AI actually has an ability to screen large populations in a very non-invasive way that would allow us to be able to do this across an entire population. So I'll give you a couple of examples. EKGs. We can run an EKG. It can do more than just simply determine an arrhythmia. It can determine whether or not you're actually going to die in the next 5 years from cardiovascular disease. Why is that important? Because if you know that and your clinician knows that, you'll be far more aggressive with your lifestyle behavior changes than you would if you had a lower risk. We also know that you can diagnose valvular disease and a variety of other congenital heart diseases and other things that normally would require a doctor's visit. Looking through the eye, we actually have seen tremendous, it's an area called oculomics, where you can actually identify not just eye disease, but diseases that are systemic, diabetes, diabetic retinopathy, In fact, we ran a program, and we're currently running programs across the country where we are now deploying this in low resource settings. In Texas, the first 50 patients in a rural clinic that came in, 1 out of every 5, 20% of them had advanced stage diabetic retinopathy requiring urgent evaluation. Their average hemoglobin A1C was 10.5%. These are individuals that have no idea that they are going to go blind in the next 3 to 5 years, and we're finding them and we're bringing them to care. If we can think about how we scale this type of an approach, it's extremely cost efficient, is accessible, and it's something that could be applied broadly. And so we have great opportunities. AI can solve some extraordinary things, but we have to think creatively about how to deploy it.
And then one of the things I love about Kate's background is that, you know, I've worked in top 30 global pharma as well. And what I loved about Kate's background and where she decided to go was we would be in meetings, patient centricity, and I'm like, well, you're not actually doing it. You know, you're not following that, you're just spewing a tagline. Kate has jumped in from leading innovation initiatives to now looking at underserved health population. So through that lens, what are you doing in that space?
Yeah, I'm really glad that Eric and David went before me. Couldn't agree more with what they just said. What we're trying to do at HI Partners is actually spend more time with the practitioners that try and help the underserved and also the communities themselves. Because everyone's heard about social determinants of health, and if you can actually tackle those first, they're going to be more receptive to the new technology that is coming towards them. So we've been spending time trying to really understand if something was going to be put in front of you, what is it going to take for you to engage? And probably most in recovery, I think people have sort of missed the mark a little bit, but being able to use AI to do predictive analytics of what not only will get your drug approved, because what gets your drug approved at the FDA is a very different data set that you often need to then go out to the market and have a payer put your drug on formulary at a certain position. So if you can use predictive analytics to do the trial once, to get both the clinical outcomes, the safety outcomes, and the PROs, I think that's going to be better for everyone. You're going to tax the patients less, you know, and patients get fatigue and they don't want to participate in clinical trials. And as Eric was saying, it's actually going to be a hell of a lot more impactful. So I thoroughly agree that's a great place for AI to be involved.
Totally.
I will add a little bit to that. I think David had shared that sometimes it's AI, sometimes it's not AI. So I think in that whole continuum of drug development, there's a lot of efficiency to be gained by interoperability, how CROs and pharma companies and other providers and sites actually participate in the clinical trial process. I think there are data sharing opportunities on how to speed up recruitment in clinical trials so that you actually finish clinical trials on time and you get speed to market. So I think it's AI plus other things which kind of need to kind of fall into place for AI to really show the potential.
Thank you. One of the things we're hearing a lot in the news, we went from, I know when we did projects for Top 30 Global, we were involving legal, we were involving compliance, regulatory, et cetera. Now we seem to be in the Wild West where that's being thrown away. For you, David, what is the non-negotiable for a guardrail in our space?
Yeah, so we know that AI can do amazing things, but at the same time, there are possibilities that it may go off the rails, or it may have what we call a hallucination, you may get an error. So as with any type of approach, we do need to put some quality and safety guardrails. But I think there's other things that we also have to consider. AI can also, in many ways, replace a lot of our decision making. And so we have to start recognizing, are there inherent biases in the AI that we have not yet accounted for? And then you think about, like, how was the AI developed? Well, it was based off of a data set. Well, where did that data set come from? And is it representative of this population? And this then gets to a bigger issue because we're starting to apply AI very much like we do with traditional software. It was FDA cleared, it's good, we don't have to worry about it. Actually, it's probably not the case anymore. We're going to have to actually put in a process to be able to do testing on local data sets and monitoring. And that is a big challenge because most organizations don't have that capacity to do that. But we're now starting to realize that we, through collaborations, in fact, there's a group of large health systems, over 60 plus, that formed what's called the Trustworthy Responsible AI Network. And the goal for this network is basically not just to say, hey, we're doing AI responsibly, but how can we work together to be able to distribute across the entire network, create a sort of what we'll call a learning network, so that we're all testing and monitoring these models, and we're doing it in a way that if we're seeing something, we're notifying everyone else and being able to stay on top of it. Because that's what's going to have to happen in the future. It's not just about clear it, forget about it. It's now about test it, continue to monitor it, and continue to adjust.
And then, Eric, again, as an investor, is your team thinking about guardrails, even though we're being told we don't need to pay attention anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who's saying you don't have to pay attention. Yeah, I mean, of course, guardrails come in all different ways. You know, I think what's really exciting, I'm just going to change the topic for a second, is there's, over the last several years, we've seen an explosion in applications to the FDA for approval for clinical diagnostic support. And this is a thing that takes time, and, you know, assuming FDA is still working and everything, we're going to see over the next couple years a massive, massive surge in approved diagnostic support technologies. And so, you know, one of the things that's really interesting is we're talking about a lot of this stuff, but very little is actually live in a diagnostic support capacity today relative to what people are working on, relative to the potential and the impact on, you know, day-to-day lives of people, practitioners, and so forth. And, you know, there is a lagging effect here. And so, you know, investors or otherwise, this is going to be a thing that is going to be exploding in capabilities and impact and so forth over the next 5, 10 years. And it's incredibly exciting, but also from a monitoring perspective, you know, this is exactly the sort of thing where you have to be, and you know, even from an investor perspective, it's like, oh, maybe there's like an interesting monitoring opportunity there. Where, you know, lives are increasingly at stake, and, you know, how is this going to be playing out? So, you know, any time that you have diagnostics in, you know, practice, you have to make sure that it's right.
Teginder, I'll jump back to you in that space, because you were at high-profile global pharma who had very good procedures and you know, mechanisms for decision-making. In your space, having that experience and then coming out into AI, sort of what's the guardrail for you that's non-negotiable?
I think David already touched on that, safety and quality. I think moving a little bit beyond the models, the deployment of AI can be put into two camps, automation or augmentation. When it is augmentation, I think you can actually control the output using a user experience and leave the judgment to the human and the critical thinking to the human, and give a flag within that user experience that now you have to put your name on this. Right? This is a suggestion. This is an augmentation of your capability. I think the threshold of testing on that can be a little bit looser. But when we are talking about automation, when a machine is actually going to go do stuff out there, the threshold has to be super high, that we have to be super sure that it is actually going to do the right thing. So I think designing procedures around that, on how to do that testing, how much testing needs to happen there, how much monitoring needs to happen there, has to be very, very stringent.
And then, Kate, in your space now, what excites you most about AI and helping these patients?
I would say it's leveraging AI with a human in the loop. So just going back to something that Teginder was saying, we've had the wonderful experience to work with some clinical decision support tools where, you know, at the end of the day, the MD is still going to sign off on that, but you've been able to introduce something into their EMR workflow to speed up their decision-making process. That's incredibly gratifying to see. And that's good because you know you're involving the person there. That's the human in the loop. And then other human in the loop things that we're interested in is we know everyone is spending a lot of money on GLP-1s. That's because people can actually see the outcome of a GLP-1. They can actually see themselves losing weight. That's why they are incredibly popular. But what are other ways that patients also need to be supported in their obesity and diabetes journey? That is at the point of decision-making around what they are going to eat. And so we've been lucky enough to work with this new solution, which is directly interacting with someone as they go shopping, as they sit down and eat, as they start cooking the meal. So again, it's leveraging AI to bring in the right details around food purchases and recipes, while also including a human, in this case the dietitian, to make sure that the information that is getting to the patient isn't ChatGPT hallucination. So for me, AI is super, super exciting. Very interested to always keep the human in the loop.
So now, as we kind of wrap up and we get ourselves ready for some socializing, for each of you, Eric, I'll start with you. What sort of thing do you want to leave the audience with, especially with the investor mindset of where are the top 1 or 2 opportunities for investors to be looking at for AI in the healthcare space?
Well, as is my style, I'm going to slightly ignore your question and answer the one that I feel like answering. I am a model. No, so the cardinal sin of the American healthcare system is separating the individual from the cost or financial impact of their healthcare decisions. And, you know, everything kind of flows from that at some level, maybe not everything. But, and then, you know, the second one is having this like multi-payer dynamic that is so hard for any stakeholder to deal with. And I'm a big believer, not necessarily strictly from an investor perspective, but from like a society perspective, of having people have some sort of financial stake in doing the right thing for themselves, for their bodies, for their long-term health. And so there are startups that, you know, may or may not be good investments, but that are innovating around alternative health insurance models from like a carrot and stick perspective, which are, you know, leveraging some innovations in healthcare, health insurance financing, be it, you know, ICHRAs or high deductible plans or what have you, that, you know, are you going to get a 2-hour wellness visit at the start of the year, every year? If so, you know, we have enough data and we can look at the demographics and understand, you know, over a long enough horizon that, you know, giving people this quantum of health, if they can take on that burden and start to do things about it, will reduce the aggregate cost of care for those people, and starting to make really interesting decisions that have a carrot and stick for individuals, I think is going to have a really big impact. Now, I'm not going to invest in those companies for a lot of reasons, but I think that hopefully, you know, all this innovation, all this experimentation, there's going to be a lot of failure, but there will be a lot of success. And, you know, then the Uniteds and whatever can swoop in and buy them and, you know, expand the aperture a bit.
Okay, I have one more question for you. As parents, we all know we're not supposed to have a favorite child, but we do. There's someone you click with in your gene pool, you click. What is your favorite sort of child or investment right now that people should be aware of?
Oh, well, okay. I'm just going to pitch my book here. We have an investment in this company called BioLink, BioLinq. It's a microneedle-based alternative to the traditional CGM. So whereas traditionally you have this like filament that you have to jam in your arm to get your blood glucose, these are microneedles, so you really can't feel them. There's 40 of them. It just got FDA clearance for type 2 diabetes. And it has 40 microneedles, not just one, so it can detect like dozens of different analytes, which is a fancy way of saying things. Cortisol, ketone, lactates, et cetera, all at once in real time. Because you don't have to wear it here, because that's like where you have to jam the filament, you can wear it anywhere, so you can put it like right here. So because you can do that, it can be in your line of sight, and that can give you real-time behavioral modification cues if your blood sugar is spiking to stop eating the mango or whatever's putting you over the top. And so I'm so bullish on this. You know, the type 2 diabetic market is, you know, 20 times bigger than the type 1. People don't do things in that market, especially that are invasive, and so I think that a non-invasive or minimally invasive alternative, you know, Apple's been trying to get blood sugar through the Apple Watch forever, and they can't because it's impossible to get it through the skin, and so super bullish here.
David, again, in your space, for our investor audience, what thing in AI is exciting you long range that people should be paying attention to?
Yeah, I think one of the first things I would say is that many folks think of AI as one thing, and oftentimes they think it's ChatGPT. And the reality is AI is a portfolio of a whole series of technologies that are getting better and better. And some of the newer technologies that I would want to definitely make sure people are aware of are what we're moving towards is our agents, an agentic agent orchestration, and robotics. And as we get into that category, there's a whole series of other new opportunities that arise. So let's not think of it just in terms of information that is providing an answer. What agents do is it allows us through the LLM to be able to create a set of guardrails and instructions and access certain information from different inputs and actually do tasks. And so when it starts doing tasks, you need to orchestrate all of that so it's doing it in an organized manner. And we've seen some amazing results already. We're solving some very complicated problems, and I would say that that would be an area that I would definitely start taking a closer look at, because that's sort of the new growth area. And then eventually you're going to get into some robotics, which will actually doing some, actually not just kind of doing a specific digital task, but it actually a mechanical task.
Cool. And Kate, when you're out there reading, taking in everything, watching the market, where's the AI opportunity for investors through your view?
My favorite child, thank God you're not really asking about my favorite kids. My favorite child is actually a non-AI based company, but it actually then enables lots of AI products to land on top of it. So going back to what I was talking about with hybrid care, and being able to integrate in-person and telehealth at the same time, that then provides the opportunity for all the different point solutions to come in that leverage AI, because without that foundation of interacting with the patient that they want to engage with, the AI might have a tough time getting in.
Thank you. And Teginder, I'm not going to ask you about your favorite child. I just want to know where investors through Google should be looking at, down the road in the next 6 months to a year.
Yeah, I'll build on David's point on agentic AI. This can be a single agent or a network of agents or a couple of agents as a team orchestrated with an overseer agent. It's almost trying to mimic what teams of humans kind of do. While that is exciting, I think the area to kind of pay attention is the problem well defined? If the problem's not well defined, AI is not going to do any magic there. The second thing is, I think for these systems to actually work, what we are discovering is a lot of effort and investment has to be put into is the right data available to these agents. Just like humans, if you don't have the right information, we cannot take the right action. So I think whenever you're kind of looking at an investment, look at the definition of the problem. Is this a real problem? And then also look at, for these technologies to work, is the right data available, accessible for the potential of these technologies to kind of really come to life?
Thank you. I want to thank our panel today. Wonderful insights. Thank you, everyone, for paying attention.